Ladies and gentlemen, this is just an update on the Charlie Kirk assassination. There are a lot of people still speculating about it, of course. We have an update on Tyler Robinson's next court date. It's going to be October 30th at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, with the judge saying he will be making all the hearings public. And we'll see what happens in terms of they will be going for the death penalty against Tyler Robinson. And now the reports are that Robinson's lawyers are saying the goal is to keep him alive. And we'll see what happens in terms of that. But that's just the update when it comes to the next hearing and possibly the next public appearance, because Robinson apparently appeared yesterday, but he wasn't shown on camera. It was another virtual appearance. And so this could be an in-person one on October 30th. You do also have a few different things I want to talk about. So this came out yesterday, the supposed letter from Charlie Kirk to Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, expressing love for Israel and repeatedly offering pointers for how they can win the information war. And this is big because we know there's been so much speculation, especially right after the assassination, that, well, it was Israel. Charlie Kirk was turning on Israel. There were these meetings that were taking place in the Hamptons with Charlie Kirk and top Israel billionaire donors, in which Kirk seemingly was souring on Israel. And we know he's been such a supporter, and how devastating would it be for Israel if they lost someone as mainstream as Kirk. And so people were formulating this opinion that Kirk was turning, and Israel said, well, we got to take him out. And you have to understand, just in terms of where we're at with the culture on the right wing, there are people that will blame Israel for literally anything. And this is another one of those instances to where the shoe doesn't even have to fit. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Well, it must be Israel, but Kirk still supported Israel. And in this letter, as long as it's confirmed to be real, which I believe, if you look at some of the top Turning Point USA people, they were questioned on it. Tim Pool asked someone, and they said, yeah, it's real. This is Kirk saying, because Kirk runs ran the Turning Point USA. He knew the young voters, the temperament, where they were going in terms of gauging the way in which their opinions were being formed. He knew that young people had an extremely negative view of Israel. And so he was trying to tell Benjamin Netanyahu ways in which they could get to young people and maybe turn young people back, in the sense of, I would imagine, trying to say that, well, Israel's a lot more pro-West than Palestine and Palestinians and Muslims, things of that nature. And so a letter like this would be extremely consistent with what Charlie Kirk believed. The idea of, oh, I run Turning Point USA. There's a lot of young people. I know these young people are very anti-Israel. How do we get them back? And Benjamin Netanyahu, he's having these struggle sessions. Charlie Kirk, remember Turning Point USA a few months ago, had a big round table with a bunch of young people discussing Israel and discussing the issue in which, whether it's a communication problem or just why does Israel at this point, especially post October 7th, have such a horrible public opinion when it comes to young people in the United States, both on the right and on the left. But obviously with Kirk, it was more focused on the people on the right. And so to me, it was obvious Kirk knew there was a problem, and he was trying to help Israel solve that problem. And he did make mention a few different times of questioning, especially October 7th, the security that Israel supposedly had or didn't have on that day, and how suspicious it was. And maybe was Israel looking for an excuse to try and get rid of the Palestinians? Well, we'll see with this 20-point peace plan that Trump has that Israel's agreed to. Maybe the Palestinians remaining in Gaza on a rebuilt project that I'm sure is very positive for Israel. If Israel's going to agree to the peace plan or the peace proposal, you would imagine it's going to be very positive for them. But just overall, this is pretty consistent. I think people immediately jumped on blaming Israel. It's like, honestly, it's a race. Who can blame Israel first? That's kind of where we're at when it comes to a lot of these public discussions on the right when something big happens. And so that was the immediate thought. And there were a few details here and there to where you could say, all right, Kirk has said a few things where he's weary of Israel. He was certainly very angry at some of their donors and some of their people whenever Kirk would question something in regards to the Jews or Israel in general, and he would get all this pushback, and they were very angry when he would platform Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson, that's where he gave his big speeches. Like the most recent major Turning Point USA event, I believe it was this past summer, Tucker Carlson was like the main speaker. And that's kind of where Tucker, does his main speeches. And he was very, anti-Israel, anti the war with Hamas. And there were a lot of certainly Israeli people that weren't, especially the donors of Kirk, that did not like that. And Kirk said, piss off. I'm going to continue platforming Tucker Carlson. There's nothing you can do about it. So you could understand there being a little bit of a rift there. There were cracks for sure. This was back in May, just understanding the timeline. So it wasn't like it was this, that far away if this letter is confirmed to be real. And it's just the overall point of it, from the desk of Charlie Kirk to Benjamin Netanyahu talking about Judeo-Christian civilization and discussing the real problem that, Charlie Kirk is having when it comes to young people and the lack of support for Israel, which is 100% legitimate. That's just what's happening. And obviously Kirk sees it. And so does Netanyahu. Netanyahu went on the Nelk Boys, which is this younger podcast, these pranksters, and it went so badly. It's like they canceled it. And the Nelk Boys, they got a lot of hate for that. And it was very, very bad. So you see just how, when it comes to young people, there's this major anti-Israel sentiment, and it's not just conservative, it's also liberal. It's just Gen Z in general, extremely negative view of Israel. Where's that going to be in 20 or 30 years when some of these people start getting power within the government? Israel obviously is trying to lobby and spend a lot of money to change their minds, although at this point it's not working. If anything, it's made younger people even more entrenched against Israel. So when it comes to this stuff about Kirk and the anti-Israel stuff, I just don't buy it. And then there's other stuff. I mean, I think an autopsy can clear a lot of this up. Now, people will still say, well, I don't believe the autopsy. I've heard a few different things on the autopsy. In terms of a murder like this, I believe the autopsy, it's the protocol within Utah. It must be performed. And so we would expect the autopsy to have been performed on the night after the assassination. And so that's, I'm guessing, when it happened. Whether or not we'll see that or it'll come out when they they go to trial, we will have to see. But either way, that's just the current updates when it comes to the Charlie Kirk stuff. Yes, there are still people, they claim he's a patsy. There was other actors at play. I mean, you're going to get that. This is what, it's modern 2025. Everyone's connected to social media. Everyone wants to be the one to be right on something or have the inside information. And it's, I know this and you don't know it, and so that makes me smarter than you. That's a lot of this with conspiracies. A lot of these people do that, to where it's like, well, you believe the official story, you're stupid. It's like, all right, man. But that's what a lot of this is. And so they say, well, there was a different bullet. He was shot from behind. It's actually an exit wound in the neck, things of that nature. Because, I mean, I think the autopsy coming out, because they did say, and this was the Turning Point USA people, they said that, well, there's no exit wound because, Charlie had amazingly healthy bones. He had like great bone density. That's where it's like, all right, that is a little bit, if it's a 30-06, you would expect an exit wound, especially an entry wound in the neck. So, I mean, there's a few inconsistencies. I think we'll just wait for it to come out, things like that. But people are certainly going to question it because of how high profile it is. And when it comes to the Turning Point USA, we're just going to have to wait and see. Now, they say Erica Kirk is now the new CEO. I don't know if that's a temporary thing. I mean, this is a pretty transitional period, I'm sure, for Turning Point USA, as they try and continue on. We were saying, and people had asked, well, who's the next Charlie Kirk? Well, it doesn't exist. Someone that's 31 or, in their late 20s that can connect, that has the knowledge that Charlie Kirk had in terms of defending Christianity, in terms of being able to argue, in terms of being able to go to all these campuses. I mean, that is a political pro. That's what Charlie Kirk was at such a young age. So there's really no replacement. So Erica Kirk right now is the CEO. I don't know where that's going to lead. Are they going to try and get someone else? Are they going to try and fill all of these speaking events with different Republicans like they're doing right now, where they've got some Republican influencers going to some of these events. They've got them going with some Republican governors, some congressmen. Maybe that's what they end up doing for the future. I'm not sure exactly, but there's definitely some talk about people taking over for Kirk. I don't really see a successor right now. It just doesn't seem like there is one, even with everyone talking about it. So that's what I would say in terms of that. And that is just the current update. And then you've also got the ADL. Yeah, the ADL is seriously anti-white. How about the ADL? Turning Point USA, the Charlie Kirk's organization, lists them as a hate group in the United States because they're pro-white. They're pro-white, so they're a hate group. And now Elon Musk is going, pretty hard again. He goes through these periods where he'll go against certain things, and now he's back on the ADL and saying it's terrible and it's anti-white, and Musk is 100% correct for sure. And they list Turning Point USA as a hate group, even to this day after the assassination. Wow. Well, that's even with Kirk writing the love letter to Netanyahu. Think about that. And again, I think what it is in terms of the Israel stuff, people just want to blame Israel for everything. That's what's just going around right now. And there were some moments you could say, well, Kirk is turning, but I don't think it was anything definitive. Kirk still wanted Israel to be in control of a lot of those Christian holy sites, Jerusalem, Bethlehem. And it was very important because he said it was Western control. It's better than Muslim control. So I think Kirk was still very pro-Israel, and it wouldn't make sense, especially considering all of the hate. And I like the way you can argue it as well. Kirk was such a supporter of Israel, and imagine if he turned, how devastating that would be, because Kirk was mainstream. And it's a little bit different when you've got someone that's mainstream that was so pro Judo-Christian values, like he says in that letter, to turn. I mean, that would be devastating, but I don't think it was happening. That's what they argue. So I would say that's just the update when it comes to the situation. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.